So the 8 limbs of yoga are the 8 different facets of an holistic yoga practice, as denoted by Patanjali, an ancient yogi sage who we think wrote these sutras or texts around 500 BC. And so the 8 limbs are the yamas, the niyamas, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and finally samadhi. Now, I'm not going to go into too much depth about what those all mean. Some of you may know already. You certainly will know this in depth once you've done your yoga teacher training. But I just wanted to mention that these 8 limbs kind of have an order to them, an order through which we practice, and we arrive at the final station, which is the attainment of yoga, as written by these ancient sages, our samadhi, or our bliss state, or a version of enlightenment, if you like. So we begin in a very external way. We begin with our ethical and moral observances. So number 1, the yamas, are ethical observances with regards to the world around us. So things like ahimsa, non-violence, which might manifest as vegetarianism, for example. And then we move inwards to our own personal ethical, moral guidance observances. So cleanliness, saucha. Tapas is one of our niyamas, our own personal ethical observances. And we then move on to asana. We move the body. So we're then moving into the self, the physical layer of the body, of the self. And we then go deeper still to the pranic sheath, the energetic sheath. So we practice yogic breathing, pranayama. And then we go deeper still, and the final couple of limbs pertain to meditation practices, focus and concentration, and bringing us very deep within our meditation to form an intimate relationship with the self. So that's kind of how this workshop's gonna roll. We start a little bit broader. We start with some knowledge, some concept. So we're going to go through a little philosophy and anatomy. And then we're going to move inward to asana. You're going to have a lovely flow. You're going to move your bodies with zaz. And then we shall close with the deepest layer of this workshop shall be a meditation with Roshi. So, here we go. So, tapas. What does tapas mean? It's the theme of our workshop today, and I'm going to break it down for you. So the word tapas in Sanskrit, and by the way, Sanskrit, and you'll learn this on your teacher training, but Sanskrit is a very multifaceted, very interesting, quite poetic language. It's very hard to learn because different words have so many different meanings. But it's wild, and you'll love learning about Sanskrit, I promise you. But the root of this word, tapas, tap, in Sanskrit directly translates as heat. So on the physical level, tapas can literally be felt as heat in the body. So the burn of a deep Utkatanasana or Padahastasana, or some deep, powerful pose, a chair pose, or a big, powerful stretch, that transforms weakness into strength. On a psychological level, tapas can be interpreted, or on a meta level, tapas can be interpreted as a friction or a resistance that arises when we go against the overwhelming momentum of our ingrained habits. So when we start something new, a new habit, a challenging habit that we're not used to, it creates friction, and that friction creates a metaphysical heat in the body, in the mind. Tapas is the discomfort, sometimes denoted as discomfort, generated when one habitual pattern kind of rubs up against the new one. So these resistances, or these negative thought patterns that arise, so when we hit a really powerful, a really strong pose, we start to feel a little bit uncomfortable. We're kind of not used to this. We've not done this before. It's pushing us a little bit outside of our comfort zone. these negative thought patterns actually become kind of cleansed and burnt off. Tapas is also thought of as a kind of a burning off of these negative energies. So we have to bring them to the surface, and we have to move physically with heat to burn off these negative thoughts or weaknesses. So I'm going to just give you a quote actually from Iyengar. He says, the whole science of character building may be regarded as a practice of tapas. So he believed that tapas was a very profound way to alter the character or on and off the mat. And when we practice tapas on the mat, essentially we practice sitting with whatever sensations and conversations arise for us without running away. So it's about sitting, it's about feeling tapas, feeling this heat, feeling this friction, these resistances, really being present and observing. So there are lots of parallels to this in modern psychology, actually, which I won't give away just now. I will go into this on our yoga teacher training. I studied psychology and positive psychology at Sussex University, so I find the overlap and the layers, the similarities between yogic philosophy and modern scientific psychology I find really fascinating, and you'll find them really interesting as well. There are few better tools than a powerful asana practice to hone your tapas training. Holding a difficult pose on your yoga mat can prepare you for kind of staying with discomfort in your daily life, helping you to launch into serious self-study and not be controlled by that which makes you uncomfortable. Now, of course, this is all within reason. We don't want to push through pain, and we want to understand and find our boundaries with regards to what is an acceptable level of tapas to be pushing through, an acceptable heat to be observing, and when does it go too far. So of course we wouldn't ask a student experiencing trauma to sit through their trauma and meditate on that. That goes too far. We wouldn't ask somebody who's feeling pain in their physical body to hold the pose, hold the pain, endure it, particularly if there are injuries or weaknesses there, right? So we find the balance, we understand the balance between where does the tapas that provides us with this new layer of understanding in the body, where does that end, and where does the sort of damaging level of tapas begin? So this is a balance that we learn to feel, to understand, to find, to explore in our practice, and that's another part of tapas practice, is learning that balance, understanding the balance. So back bends. The flow today is going to be a little bit backbendy. Back bends are a classic example of tapas in practice. They can be intense, and you feel the physical heat and the energy surge. I always think of a back bend, I always talk of back bends as being like a sort of natural coffee shot. They bring you straight up, they really wake you up, they're powerful. You feel that tangible heat, and they piss us off. They really kind of rub us up the wrong way. And a lot of people can't handle back bends. On the physical level, we're weak through the spine, through our postural connections because of our sedentary living, but also they're very exposing, they're really exposing the heart and the body. They're very egotistical poses. A lot of people don't have the emotional resilience for that nowadays. So they can be horrid. Back bends can be really horrible. And so again, it's about finding the balance, but I would love for you in your asana practice that's following, I would love for you to try to move into a back bend shape and really be present to that feeling of heat. So you'll feel the physical sensation of heat rising pretty quickly. Now, I'm not saying hold that necessarily for ages and ages and ages and feel it and experience it and hold it and push and push and push. I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm just saying once it arises, when you feel the heat, be present to it, notice it. What does that heat feel like? Where is that heat in the body? Find that feeling of tapas. Be present to it. Notice the negative thought patterns that come up. Oh, this is tough. I can't do this. I can't hold this. Be aware of that friction. Breathe through it. And even if it's just for a split second, again, you don't need to hold. You don't need to experience discomfort for ages and ages and ages. It's not exponential. The more tapas we experience, the better we become at dealing with it. It doesn't work like that. I just want you to be present in that moment. Observe the tapas in the back bend. And then come out, release, and pause. Assimilate for a moment. Again, this could just be a second, a split second. And then you continue your flow. So I'd love for you to just really explore that aspect of the practice today. This is a really nice time of year actually to also be exploring the concept of tapas, wintertime. It may be harder to get out of bed because of lack of light in the mornings. It may be harder to stick to our exercise regime because it's chilly outside, or it may be harder to maintain healthy eating because of the overindulging during the festivities. Life kind of just seems generally a little bit harder, and we're more run down, our immune system's a little bit more run down. But if we persist with a fiery yoga practice and these back bends, particularly through these times when our dedication kind of wavers, we can begin to penetrate another layer of the magic of tapas. We discover that we ourselves can create the energy that we are missing, that the heat and the light that we are searching for lies within us. We just need to cultivate the key to unlock that. So with that being said, and no further ado, let's practice.